A series of engagement loops, one followed after another, leads to what is called a progression loop, or sometimes it's even called the player's journey. The player's journey, or the progression loop, is the progress through the entire gamified experience accomplished through a set of intermediate steps. Rather than a player going directly to the end of the gamified experience, she encounters a series of smaller steps or obstacles that are overcome on the way to the major obstacle or objective of the experience. Often, moving through the progression loop becomes increasingly difficult and demanding as the learner moves toward the end of the gamified experience. Progression loops consist of a series of engagement or feedback loops, but if the gamified system only had one type of engagement loop, the learner or player would be doing the same thing over and over again. It would lead to boredom, so progression loops typically do two things. One, they introduce new stimulus or changes into the engagement or feedback loop to encourage different behaviors or to necessitate the application of different skills or knowledge. This is easily noticed as gamified experiences usually become more difficult over time. Either the easier actions are no longer valuable or become more demanding, or the opportunity to engage with those actions disappears entirely and the learner must focus on other activities or loops to gain necessary rewards. The second element, often introduced by the overall progression loop, is the concept of what is called a negative feedback loop. Progression loops encompass both positive feedback and negative feedback loops. But keep in mind, positive and negative don't mean good and bad. A positive feedback loop means that there's a relationship between the outcome and the action, a correlation. For example, if you find gems, you power up, and when you power up, you become stronger and are better able to find gems. This is a loop that is good for the player. But the same can be true in the opposite direction. You are unable to find gems, you can't power up, you become weaker, and you have a harder time finding gems. This could be bad for the player. In either of these cases, however, the loop becomes stronger or positive with each iteration. The difference is in one case, the stronger loop is better, and in the other case, it's not. But both are referred to as positive reinforcement loops. This is really what we think of when we talk about the engagement or learning loop. Most discussions of engagement loops are really about positive feedback loops. A negative feedback loop, on the other hand, does not become stronger with each iteration. Instead, it becomes weaker. It's an effect that diminishes an outcome instead of amplifying it. The goal of a negative feedback loop is to help balance the gameplay so one person or team doesn't have such a large advantage that continues to grow over time. It's like giving the puck to the other team in the new face-off after your team has scored a goal. It tips the advantage in their direction. A negative feedback loop makes it harder for an event to occur again and again. It balances the game. So if players are racing to explore an ancient lost city in the jungle, the player who is fallen behind will find better power-ups, and the player who is ahead will encounter more obstacles. This is a negative feedback loop. It evens the game and gives the player who is behind a chance to catch up. But it can't continue indefinitely. Eventually, the lead would change or the person behind would always catch up, and that's not balanced either. Also, if a player senses or figures out that being behind is somehow an advantage, the player may incorporate that as a strategy and use it to win at the last possible moment, or, on the other hand, may get discouraged and feel as if they are being unfairly punished for being ahead. So be deliberate about creating negative feedback loops in your design of gamified learning environments. Thinking about the progress of a learner through the entire gamified experience with both positive and negative feedback loops will help you to create a more engaging, exciting, and balanced experience for the learner. Consider the progression loop you have created and make sure it leads to your desired learning outcome.